Good morning. Um, Welcome to Stories of Grace. Whoa, is this the first? Yeah, the first week in August. Just 3 weeks left of what we call our summer quarter. Can you believe it? Well, it's here. Teri, Ulrich, come on up. You guys know Teri, right? Many of you do. Teri and I talked, I would say, and got together maybe 9 months ago.
About that.
I don't know. Actually, it was very arbitrary.
It was like
Maybe a year ago or a little less than a year ago. But Teri it had been on her heart to share a little bit of what she had gone through. And I think specifically at the time, she was thinking of 2017 and just kind of a series of challenges that took place in her life. And then the refining effect that it was having on her, and she wanted to testify to that. And we do testimonies in Silver Saints, but one that takes a little time is kind of hard to know when to fit in it doesn't have as much power when you cram that into a 3-minute thing in a service. So I've had that in mind to have Teri share. But I also just thought, by means of introduction, before I open in prayer, to just say that, Teri, you've been a big encouragement to me and to this church. And, not everybody, we have a lot of people that love things about the church. They love maybe their friend group in the church, or they love something that they see, or maybe even a way that they can use the church to have their own ministry base. We've had that many times for people kind of network and use the church in different ways, and that's part of can be a healthy church experience. But when I think of Teri Ulrich, I think she really loves her church. Like, she loves everybody, and she loves the leaders.
serving.
And she loves serving, yeah, and right. But she's all in, fully invested, and I would say even in recent years, tested in many ways. But one of those tests has been, how do you really feel about that church of yours? And I don't know. Nobody has to stay, but she just has just a undying love. Whatever she's involved in, she really loves. So if it's the women's camp out, she's 110% in and is telling everybody how many days it is till the next. And same thing with the choir. She doesn't just kind of do it. So, and I think of you, and I'm kind of priming the pump an awful lot here, but just to say, I really admire the way that you have not had an easy go of it at all. And I think the endurance that you've showed in your life is something that coupled with your absolute commitment to church. It's not just a thing you go to. You're tearing up a little bit. I better stop right there. Too early to jump into too much praise. But no, I'm really grateful and we chatted on the phone this week again to just kind of have a game plan. And just some real neat ups and downs in your story that I think would be great to share. So let's open our time with a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for Teri, and thank you for the unique nature of her story. Lord, you know everything about her. You know just what you had in mind with her for how you would use her. We're kind of amazed at times with how much hardship is going to be involved with any one individual story. And yet it's just so amazing, that tapestry of how you kind of weave things together and produce what eventually you just look back and you say, that's a powerful, wonderful story. And so we thank you for that, and just pray your blessing over Teri as she shares today. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Kind of felt that way about Mary. I don't know if Mary Custer is here today, but Mary has one of those stories where you didn't really see the beauty in her service until it just became so long and so faithful that you're like, who is that Mary Custer back there? So Teri's got a little bit of that story, but let's back way up and let's talk about where are you from, Teri, and how did you fit into your family dynamic? How many kids were in your family? Oh, sorry. Get you going.
Tyson's waving at me. I am from a small town in Colorado, about 50 miles from this Utah state line called Grand Junction. And I am the third child of 4.
And was the fourth a boy or a girl?
Boy.
Oh, okay.
I was raised Catholic, and you have to have a son, according to my mother. You had to have a son. And so the joke is my mom and dad had their first child in 1960 while he was still in med school. And then 5 years later, my sister came. 50 weeks later, I came, and 15 months later, my brother came. So once they figured out how to do it again, they did it till they forgot what they wanted.
Well, then and you, if it's just 15 months after you, then you didn't really have time to know what hit you there. But you really were in a neat spot, being the youngest of 3 girls. And he kind of became that special, you just became a middle child.
Yes, I am the quintessential middle child. We were raised Catholic. I went through, I went to parochial school 1st through 6th grade, and every Sunday we went to church, and if we were really, really good, we got donuts at the end. So why not? When I was in middle school, I went to band camp, and while I was there, these college kids were talking to me. And they told me about Jesus, and if I died today, did I know where I'd be going? And I said, well, I think so. And they said, do you want to know? And so I made a profession of faith, but that was a mouth thing. It wasn't a heart thing.
Okay.
Okay.
hang on. I brought up Mary, and Mary was a little like that, Mary Custer. So I just want to follow up. You said your dad was a doctor?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of doctor?
I'm general practitioner. We were in a small town, and sometimes he got paid in someone mowing the lawn. Sometimes he got paid with people coming over and helping mom do laundry or do something.
Wow.
We got a lot of produce. We got a side of beef and a side of pork every year. In that, so it was a lot of the barter system. We weren't rich
Really?
doctor family.
Okay.
No, he's up until 2 weeks before he died. He was still doing house calls.
Sounds a little like Little House on the Prairie.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember your mom visiting.
Yes.
But I don't ever remember your dad visiting. Did he pass when you were young?
The summer before I went into my senior year of high school, he passed away.
Oh, wow.
I was 17.
Okay.
He didn't get to walk any of us down the aisle. He saw 2 of the 4 of us graduate.
Okay, and your siblings are all still in the Colorado
I
area?
have 2 sisters who still live in Littleton area in Colorado, and then my brother lives in Tacoma, Washington.
And I may just be forgetting, but I don't remember your siblings visiting. Have they come very often?
Actually, for the first time since I've been living here, and we moved here in 97, my sister came and visited 2 weekends ago. My oldest sister, Debbie.
Wow.
My other sister and my brother don't have a lot to do with me because I left the church.
Because you left the Catholic Church. Okay, well, let's back up. Let's back up there.
Okay.
Okay, you were raised in a Catholic family.
Yes.
And you're saying that in your particular Catholic family, you were you very faithful? Did you spend a lot of time in
I
church?
went through all the rites of initiation, as it were, the sacraments. I was, baptized, First Communion, First Confession, and I received my confirmation just because I promised my dad I would. By the time I was that age, I was kind of becoming disillusioned a bit with the Catholic Church and some of their rules, and how I really questioned how a man who is just a human being like I am could forgive sins. I really struggled with that. And I was also exploring my own person and doing things that I knew the Catholic Church frowned on, and I just didn't feel like I was being, I had nothing holding me accountable,
Yeah.
to be totally honest.
Did you feel like, looking back, were you, maybe amongst your peers or specifically your siblings, were you especially compliant, or were you always like,
If you
did
guys,
you like to challenge your parents or your authority figures in your life?
yes, I had this habit of saying what I thought, and a woman was to, a proper young lady was to be seen and not heard. That's how a proper young lady was. And then when she got married, then she shared the opinion of her husband.
Well,
That's just not me. If you know me, that's just not me.
That's one end of the spectrum, but are you saying that you, I mean, people wouldn't probably say that was a real rebellious streak to feel that, but did you have, would you look back and say that you actually were, you didn't describe rebellion right there, you described wanting to feel some worth.
Yes, that's, yeah. I have sought forever to find my value and to find my worth. And I looked for, I being a proper young woman, I thought, okay, I need to find a man so I can have value. And so the first guy who I dated, I went all in all ways, and that was probably not the best choice. And then after my father died, he broke up with me, and I was devastated. So I have always, not always, I have for very much in my life sought value and finding my worth in other people in the wrong places at times.
Okay, good. When you came, you came in '97. I came back to Baraboo as a youth pastor in 2000, so it wasn't too far after, but we had this little Ulrich family, and Stephen was your son's name, and your husband's name was also Steve or Stephen.
Steve, not Stephen. Steve.
It's not even legally Stephen?
Nope, just Steve.
Okay. But you had this boy, and then you had a big gap, or a fairly big gap, and you had a daughter. And I came to realize that Steve was not the biological dad of Stephen. So I guess you and I talked about it. You said you were willing to share that story, but tell us a little bit about how you had Steve.
Okay,
Stephen.
so after I graduated from high school, I moved to Denver and was staying with an aunt and uncle, and their rules were for me to be able to live there rent-free, I had to either be in school or have a job. So I did both. And my friends from school threw me a surprise birthday party the day before I turned 20, and 9 months later, surprise! Well, not quite 9 months later, there was alcohol involved, and again, trying to find my value in a person. I was with a person, and I found out about 2.5 months later that I was expecting my son. I went to my priest, because as a good Catholic woman should, and said, what should I do? And this priest encouraged me to seek all my options, because in his opinion, I was not ready to be a mother. And so
Did he spell out those options?
Oh yeah, he said, there's adoption, and I knew I couldn't do that. I could not carry a baby for 9 months and then give it away. And he goes, well, there's other options you could seek out. I'm like, and so I sought the alternative option out, and I was on my way to have an abortion when Whitney Houston, I'm a child of this is a child of the 80s thing. Whitney Houston's Greatest Love of All song came on, and it got to the point where I believe the children are the future. And I hit seek on my radio station because I didn't want to hear about children being the future. I'm going to go kill my kid. And so I couldn't do that. And so I'm in Denver, where there's probably a good 100, 120 radio stations easily. And that's FM, AM, and they didn't have satellite radio way back in the Stone Age. And nothing, I heard nothing, so I hit seek one more time, and all I hear, do you feel lost? do you feel alone? Do you feel like there's no one who knows you and you have no friends? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he goes, well, my friend, there is a person who can find you, who does know you, who wants nothing more than be your friend and loves you. And that is a person of Jesus Christ. By this point, I have pulled over off the highway. I am sobbing. Amazing Grace is playing in the background. And I'm like, dear Lord, I know I have messed up, but if you help me through this, I promise I'll do better. And that wasn't really a conversion yet, but it's my first step towards my conversion. So I have my son, Stephen, thank God, because he is, I can't imagine not having him and not having Diana and not having those 3 beautiful grandchildren that I have. So that was, I became a single parent at the age of 20. 3 months later, I turned 21. And so I began that journey. That journey led me to a job where I met my husband, Steve, and he was going through a divorce, a pretty bitter divorce, and we started dating and talking and became buddies. And where I was living with my aunt and uncle it was becoming very unsafe very quickly. So he offered for me to move in with him, and we became roommates, and then we fell in what I thought was love, and Sarah was on her way. We got married, and we started doing the your church, my church kind of thing. And we went to Catholic church, and we went to his Baptist church, and I felt more comfortable at his Baptist church than I did the Catholic church. They noticed when we weren't there. They cared, or appeared to care. So one day the pastor was preaching on grace, and the Amazing Grace that event in the car. I'm like, oh, okay. So I went up and I gave my life to the Lord, and I became a Christian, and I got saved. And 2 weeks later, I was baptized. And
This is when Sarah was how old?
3 months.
Okay, when she was, just
3 months.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, my son Stephen became a Christian and got baptized as well. And that's
Okay, yeah.
That's me.
All right, so you had kind of teased out a little bit earlier about the fact that you did have kind of a confrontation of the gospel, or a hearing of it, through repeat that again, was it through a Christian camp?
Well, I was at band camp, and there was a
Band camp.
in Fort Collins, Colorado, and there was a Campus Crusade for Christ event going on there. And so I met, so I was 14 years old, and I wanted nothing more than to be cool, like some college kids. And so I said, yes, of course. So that was a mouth thing.
How were they talking with the band camp kids?
Well, because I was waiting for my friend who was in an audition, and I was waiting there, and then he came up and started chit-chatting with me.
They just were chatting? Okay, it was not a event.
No, they were just chit-chatting. And
wow.
Yeah, and then, so that was like a mouth thing. And then the event, the encounter with Jesus in the car was a head thing. But when I put it all together, it was a heart thing, and it became real.
Wow.
That's at least that's how I explain it to people when I'm witnessing.
Yeah, I think sometimes people say, well, church is those are Christians, and you shouldn't speak in a way that doesn't assume that they are Christians, because it's the church. They're all Christian, and I just have never felt that way. It's kind of a mix. You don't want to pretend that they're not, and that you're not discipling. But I think there are different points and I could think of other examples of folks in our congregation that even after they attended here for a decade or longer, they had this incredible sense of clarity of understanding things and a clear indication of commitment. We had Matt Pelland up here
last week.
Well, I'm forgetting, was it last week? Yeah. And he became a believer, but this process of submitting himself, kind of even in big ways, took a good decade. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, for you, and it's just interesting how sometimes people grow in the faith and they understand it all, and then it becomes more personal. Some have a dramatic experience, and they kind of understand what's expected in following Jesus. And sometimes there are just these I don't know exactly what the metaphor is. Seeds are being planted, or
Right.
you know,
Little
I like
drops
your
in the bucket.
yeah, I like your heart head. What did you say? The first one was the heart.
Was the first thing was a mouth thing.
A mouth.
I said something that so I'd be seem cool. The second thing was I'm making a deal with let's make a deal with God. And the third time it was I was changed. It was a full conversion.
Yeah.
I was changed.
Okay, so you were a professing believer probably since your birth, in one sense or another.
Right.
But you,
I knew there was a God, and I believed in God, and I believed in heaven, and I believed in hell. I just didn't know how it pertained to me.
let's talk a little bit about Steve.
Yes. So
Do you think he was a believer when you?
he professed to be a believer, and then
And he was part of a Baptist church.
right. He was attending a Baptist church. And then we hit a road bump when Sarah was about 2, and we were talking with our pastor, and it became very clear to me. So I told him, I said, I shared my story. I said, what is yours? He goes, well, my sister and I we went to church together, and so I'm a Christian. I'm like, So I knew he was. I questioned it, and of course the pastor who we were counseling with jumped right in and led him down the Romans road, and he professed a faith, but I question it, because after you become a believer, there should be fruits. You should see fruit. Every now and then I'd see a twig, but it would wither and die on the on the vine. So I don't know. And Sarah and I were talking, and I sometimes wonder if I'm still a little angry. So we got married, and I was all in, and I made a covenant with Steve and with God that I was his wife, and I would be his wife until the day one of us died. That covenant was broken many, many times by the actions and behaviors of Steve. Yet I said, nope, I made a covenant. I am sticking with him. We went to counseling. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. I read Martha Peace's The Excellent Wife, front to back, a couple times, just so that I could figure out, instead of trying to change him, I tried to change, I changed me and how I interacted with him, hoping to help him. For a while, we were pretty good. I was at a Head Start convention, because I was a part of Head Start. I was like parent policy council, and I get a phone call from Dan telling me that my husband got high at home and was doing inappropriate things, and that
I'm sorry, Dan.
you.
Oh, me. Oh.
You.
Okay.
Remember? Do
I
you
didn't
remember
know.
this?
Well, can we back up just
Sure,
a touch?
sure.
And then we'll head back into.
Okay.
We left off. You were in Colorado.
How did I get to Wisconsin?
And then, how did you end up here? And you already got me in the story.
I am a good submissive wife. Steve's family is from Illinois. He had a brother and his dad were in Illinois. He had 2 sisters in Wisconsin. We came out here to visit many, many times, and I kind of liked Wisconsin. It was pretty. My sisters and I were not close because I went from Catholic to Baptist, and the only time we really got together was when my mom came to town, and so I really had no family support, so I thought, okay. So we moved to Wisconsin 2 weeks before Sarah turned 3, 1997, and the day we found this church, it was the first Sunday we were in town, and the kids and I were driving around because Steve was at work, and we came up up East Street, and I looked at the church, and I'm like, that looks like home, because the layout of the church looked like our church we attended back in Colorado. And so I pulled into the parking lot, and this lady was walking out, and I pulled over and I said, ma'am, do you attend here? She goes, yeah. And I'm like, so can you tell me, how's the pastor? Do they have a good youth program? Do they have a choir? Asking. She goes, yes, they have a really good youth program, and yes, we have a choir. I'm kind of biased because the pastor's my husband, and so, I don't know if Anne's in here. And so I drove to Steve's work, took him his lunch and his dinner, and I said, I think we found a church. And and we've been coming here ever since.
Okay, yeah. Did work draw you, or was just what was?
Oh, he wanted to be near his family
But why Baraboo?
because it reminded me of Grand Junction.
Oh, you
It
just
had-
were driving through? And,
Well, because his sister lived in Laval.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Steve's sister lives in Laval, and so we'd go to visit her, and we'd come down to Baraboo,
I
and
see.
we went to Devil's Lake and stuff, and I just we liked Baraboo.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Plus, it's a fun name.
Okay, yeah, right. Fun name too. So yeah, you came to Baraboo in '97, and then yeah, I do remember that time it was either 2000 or
It was
or
2000.
2001.
It was 2001 because
Was it the springtime? But
yes, it was in springtime, and he called me, and I got a friend to drive me back because I knew social services was going to become involved because he's a mandated reporter and he had to do that, and I respected that and understood that, and so I got home and so that I was present, and Steve went on a walkabout. He knew he was in trouble because he did inappropriate things at home, and just my son Steven and I wound up testifying. You know, he got arrested, and we wound up testifying, and he was sent to rehab in La Crosse for 6 months. Right, Sarah? 6 months. She was little. And I know that was 2001 because he came home, and a week later 9/11 happened. It was right after our first celebration Sunday. And so after he went to La Crosse and came home, he was good for a while. He was better at hiding it. And so we were good until we had the purpose-driven church, and we had a Sunday school. We had a Bible study in our home. Larry Smith came, and Larry Smith was really good at holding Steve accountable because we had talked about that. I think Pastor Dave purposefully put him in our church, put him in our group for that reason, and Larry was really good at holding Steve accountable.
you guys were in a weekly Bible study, going through the whole Bible.
Yes, we were. Yeah, I'm surprised you remember
For
that.
about 7 years. I don't know how many years it was.
Yes,
but
it was.
and you never did get through the whole Bible.
We never even got through the Old Testament.
But
it was so.
yeah,
it took us a year to get through Job.
Yeah, right. And part of that is Larry.
Yes.
But I guess, knowing what I knew in 2000, probably just, 2001. And then, this Stephen, your son, was just a very vibrant 8th grade the first year that I
in love with the Lord and on fire for the Lord.
Yeah, very passionate, very communicative, and you needed some kids like that for the dynamic at the youth group, to have some that were kind of all in. But knowing that you guys were in a very difficult spot, but I guess, it was quite amazing to me, covenant defiling sins, and I often refer to those in a marriage. I mean, we all need accountable to do better. But man, you're right near the edge of a cliff in terms of the marriage.
Yes.
When you're doing covenant defiling sins. And yet there was something about this Teri Ulrich, who is kind of eternally optimistic and, focused on the next thing, raising the kids. And it wasn't like you just lived separate lives. You definitely were. This Bible study always kind of cracked me up because it really was such a marathon of a study. But you guys were very committed to that. And
we hosted it.
Yeah.
It was in our
Okay.
house
Oh, it was.
every
Okay.
week.
No wonder you're always there. They
Right,
brought it to
kinda
you.
had to.
Yeah.
It was, and through it, Steve would do his ups and downs and
Right.
ups and downs, and it was kind of like it was a roller coaster. And shortly before Stephen graduated, he went through another bout, and this time he decided he knew he was wrong, and so he decided
Now,
that
you might want to say your son or your husband,
Steve,
because
my husband,
it gets a little confusing,
right,
I think.
Shortly before Stephen graduated, my son, my husband Steve, went through another crisis and he decided that his way of getting attention would he would drink gasoline antifreeze, and then he'd call and tell me that he had done so, and then I try and find where he's at and get him in hospital and get him in treatment again and get him back on the right road. And we did this many times. Just, and Lord Diana, because she was in love with my son and married him, she became part of this trajectory. And then they had Malachi, and I am trying so hard to keep our family, to keep us together, because I don't want my children and now my grandchildren to see failure. And but it's getting worse, and it's getting worse. And then Sarah graduates from high school, and that was in 2013, and he's just kind of, he said, we come home from work, and I would knock on the door, or Sarah would knock on the door right before we came in, because he never knew what he might be looking at on the computer, what he might be doing. And we just kind of, it was hard. And I worked 45 minutes away one way. And so I wasn't, and I blamed myself for a while. I went through the blame game. And if I didn't have that job, if I worked closer, maybe I was home more, maybe he would not need to supplement. But that's not the case. So 2017 rolls around, and my best friend, who knew all my dirty secrets and where all the bodies were buried, and Steve's dirty secrets and where the bodies were buried.
You're using that as an expression.
Yes, there's no dead bodies,
There are
I promise.
No bodies that are buried.
Her battle with cancer ended, and she went on to glory. And that was in February. On May 4th, we found out that my mom had stage 4 vaginal cancer. And then May 24th, right after the ladies' camp out, my sister calls me and says, it's time, you need to come. And on June 3rd, my mom was reunited with my dad, and I am praying. She came to church, and she had friends who were Baptists, and I pray that at some point she made a conversion, but I don't know. That was June 4th. On June 28th, Steve once again drank bottles of antifreeze and was wound up in the hospital, and he refused treatment. And his sister and they invoked the power of attorney, and they saved his life, and they got him the treatment he needed, and he was in the hospital until July 16th. He came home, and I told him, I can't do this again. I said, well, no, I can do this again through him who strengthens me. I choose not to do this again. You need to get help. And then he seemed okay. We had this wonderful weekend with the grandkids. We went to the zoo. We did all these fun things. And then Sarah points out to me, she goes, Mom, just watch Dad. Every time he gets a text message, or every time he gets on his phone, he leaves the room. Like, okay. And so I kind of watched, like, that is weird. And then I woke up Monday morning about 3 a.m., and he's getting out of bed, and he's putting on his shorts, and takes his phone and goes into the living room. And I'm like, at 3 a.m., okay. So we had left my car down in Madison, where I work, and so he was going to drive me to work. And so when he got up to take a shower, I did something I never, ever, ever have done, and I invaded his privacy and looked at his phone. On a screen this big, I saw the final covenant-breaking straw. The person had said, I love you, and he texts back, I love you too. Now, he's cheated on me many, many, many times, and he has always said it was just a thing, and that I was his wife and that I was the only person he loved. When I saw those words, I put the phone back down, and I got ready for work, and we were driving. And when we were between Sauk and Madison, when I knew he couldn't kick me out of the car or whatever, I told him that I apologized to him for reading his phone. I told him what I saw, and I thought that maybe he should go to Missouri and spend time with our son Seth, his son, but the son of my heart, Seth. Well, I decided if I could forgive him again. He got very angry and dropped me off, and he went out, got drunk, got arrested, thrown into drunk tank. Called me many, many, many times that night. This is August 14th, Seth's birthday. And called me many, many, many times. And he showed up at my work Tuesday morning and pounding on the door because I had changed the code so he couldn't get in because I did something in me said, this is going to be a thing. And I finally let him in, took him to get his car, but it was impounded and he didn't have enough money in the account to get it out. And so then he messaged Sarah and asked her for money, and she said, no. Messaged Stephen, asked Stephen for money, and Stephen's like, Dad, I don't got it right now. And then, but his check hit, and Stephen drove him down, and I stayed home, packed a bag, and I was going to plan to stay at work. This is now Wednesday the 15th and 16th, and he is calling me and messaging me and saying all kinds of horrible things to me, and he tells me he's going to do it right this time, and he's got 2 bottles, and he's going to end it, and we'll never find him. And so Stephen and his brother-in-law, Sean Hermson, are driving around looking for Steve all over Madison. It's pouring rain. It's horrible out. He finally messages me and tells me where he's going to be. They get him, and he actually collapses, and they get him to the hospital. And Stephen and I both go in as a united front and tell him, you are not welcome home until you get help, inpatient, sustainable help. That was the last time I saw my husband.
Let's back up again, and I just want to think a little bit of it. It's really hard to hear Steve's story, and not most of us, but a fair number of us have known Steve. But just give me a little bit on Teri through, not through the lens of a marriage, but tell me, you become very involved in the church at different levels. We've mentioned a couple things, but tell me about your own discipleship. Part of it was through that Bible study, but how have you grown? What have either been the ways you've been involved in service, or your own personal times with the Lord? Like what has been your growth pattern? You were kind of new to this whole faith thing. You kind of got into a Baptist church. You came here, we're excited to be here and be involved in a choir and things, but how has your faith, your knowledge of God and His Word, your obedience, how has that developed over the last 20 years?
Well, when I first became a Christian, there was a women's Bible study in Colorado with Miss Marilyn, and that was my foundation. She was my building block. Those were the building blocks. And I bought books. When I found out I was pregnant with Stephen, I went to the library and got every book I possibly could find on being a single parent. So I educate myself. I went and I got every book on Bible studies and devotionals, and I read them, and I read them, and I read them. I was part of many. And then when we got here, we sat under Dale and Joy Maher, young singles, for years, and that was a good discipleship. And then I went through the learning what my spiritual gifts were, and lo and behold, mine was service. Wouldn't have guessed that, would you?
I can see that.
And so I plugged myself into being able to serve. I served in the nursery. I got involved with the camp out, and started serving there. And every time there was praying, and there was discipleship, and then then I was helping figure out what the themes were going to be. So then I'm in my Bible looking for the themes and looking for things that fed me, trying to decide if that'll feed others. We've done many women's workshops and many Sunday schools classes. Like I sat under Katie Cowan's, many of hers, and then personal Bible study. And then this sounds crazy, but Tyson, when he chooses a song, we go through the etymology of the song. We go through what it means and what it's trying to show us and what it's trying to teach us. And I learned Bible verses by singing them. And so Tyson was huge. I've learned so much from him. He is my prayer warrior. If I have something going on, it's Tyson who I call first. Sorry, Dan. Because he is the person. Now that Carolyn's gone, he knows where the bodies are buried, as it were.
Again, an expression.
Expression. Sorry, there are no bodies.
Yeah.
So so can I say, I went to this class and I've read these books. It's a multitude, and it's praying with people, and it's having real conversations with people, and going back and saying, okay, and then figuring out what if I have a friend who needs something, I'll go read about it and then try and share it with them. So
I oftentimes say to people that, it's just a reoccurring thing that people are wondering, how do you get to know people, and how do you fit in around here? And it just comes up all the time, and there's different ways to do that. But I think you've found one area. I mean, you're involved in many, many ways, but I think your hunger for service has been remarkable. And I would say that when you do things together, I feel like mission trips, sometimes I've been on those mission trips and I've been like, why can't we reproduce this at home? And really a lot of it is working together. When you just get dirty and work hard, and
Right.
I mean, being on a VBS team, or but some people are
I was on the trustee committee. And
well, I was going to say, yeah, you were a trustee for 6 years probably,
yeah.
if you did the full
Yeah.
two full terms, 6, and then you served on the nominating committee, right?
I've been the nominating committee. I have trustees.
Safety committee.
Those little pamphlets in every room. I designed those and implemented those, and it's.
But relationships are all around.
Yes,
it's
not just. I don't just come here, listen to the service, sing the pretty songs, and go home. The church is not this building, even though it's lovely. The church is the people. So the more I pour into the people, the more they pour into me. The closer I get to God. That's my equation.
Yeah, nice. So you shared, you had a number of things on 2017, and you didn't share them all, and you certainly don't need to, but it had kind of a culminating, I think we maybe want to conclude the Steve chapter.
Yes.
And not that we wouldn't pray for him, but I'm just saying that just is a never-ending, ugly saga. But we don't know where Steve is. He's kind of removed from the picture.
I'm
but
still married.
Yeah, still technically married, and I'm not sure how those situations, how the government looks at any of that. But so that's been since 2017. So that's what,
Right.
6
6 years, August 14th. It'll be 6 years, August 14th.
Yeah, and you wrote a testimony, and you entitled it.
Finding my value.
I think you meant finding my real value.
Yep.
For some reason, it says ringing my real value. I just noticed that
Yep.
now. But
Yep.
give us a little bit about your son. You say in that letter or in that testimony, your son really kind of became your rock, and
Yeah, well, I
and you-
say that we grew up together, and when I couldn't lean on my husband, I wound up leaning on him, which is not the right thing to do. It's not how a parent should interact with their child. And so in 2017, when Steve was having his issues, Steve and Diana hit a rough patch, and he basically told me he could not be my rock anymore because he needed to focus on him and his family, which as it should be. So they kept telling, well, talk to your friends, talk to your friends. I'm like, I don't have any friends. Well, I guess I did. I leaned on Ann Hutchins, Laquita Bicknell, and Jen Rabata, and they helped me through what seemed like an impossible time. I continued. So I worked for 50 plus hours a week, and Sarah and I hammered out a new normal, and I continued doing that for a few years, and then my body said, I can't do 60 plus hours a week anymore. You're getting old, lady. And I had the closest thing I ever want to come to is a heart attack. Started at the baptism at the lake. I think it was 2019. And so I told my boss that I needed, for health reasons, to quit. And I got a job working with the school district. I was making a lot more money than I am now, and I was the breadwinner, and now I'm really leaning on Sarah to help me pay bills where I had so I'm no longer a wife. My children are grown, so I'm no longer really needed as a mom, and now I'm not even really the main breadwinner of the family. So my value is in a decline. We're in a recession here, people, and then in 2020, 2021, Stephen is deployed again, and he makes some hard choices, which causes their marriage to end. And had been leaning on my family, and now my family feels like it's shattering. So stable family, nope. Everything's just going down, and I really hit bottom. And I'm like, I have no value. What value am I? I can't even keep my family together. What's going on? So I finally listened to Stephen and Diana, and I reached out and sought Christian counseling through Mark Brandel. And we talked for about a month weekly, and he helped me. He had me do silly things like go for walks. And he said, you read your Bible and you pray, but do you listen? And so I started listening. I learned how to listen to God. And I started reading again, because God and I really hadn't been talking since 2017. I mean, I prayed, but I didn't listen, because I was really kind of mad at God. At that point, I was also kind of upset with this church, because I went to them and said, you got to help me save Steve and Diana's marriage. And I basically said, nope, that's not our job. They have to figure this out. So I'm going to find a new church. They don't care. They don't value us. And I looked. I actually did look for a little while. But again, the church is not this building. The church is the people. And the people came around me, and I found this table tribe of mine. And they helped me, and we talked, and we were silly. And then COVID hit. And COVID was horrible and hard. And I didn't have the camp out. I didn't have the buzz. I couldn't even go to work. God said, are you ready to listen now? And I was. And my value is not in people. It's not in my job. It's not in my family even. It's in Him. And it's in who I am because of Him. My value I find my value in the shed blood of Jesus Christ. And that's all I need.
Nice. Amen. Well, we have just a matter of minutes left, and I thought you really are, the Lord is kind of giving you a fresh start here, and I think we're seeing new growth following a time of, I don't know if time of famine is too strong, but it felt like your world was kind of crashing down and burning, and then, sometimes after you see a fire, it takes a little while, and it's just fun talking to you the other day about what you're up to these days. Just tell a little bit about what the Lord has given you during COVID, a new path that He's kind of put you on.
Well, so I'm working for the Bearwood School District, and I
What
found,
have you been doing with the Bearwood School District?
I am a paraprofessional working for special education, special needs kids.
So
Like,
I'm sorry, is that like a assistant?
it is a paraprofessional is the fancy term for teacher's aide.
A teacher's aide. So it's not a well-paying.
Oh
Oh, sorry.
no.
So it's not meant to really be a career at that level.
Well, some people have turned it into a career,
Okay.
but no, you have to have another income to be able to live. Let's be real. And so, again, COVID hit, and I had been feeling led to go back to school. I'm like, God, how can I do that? I can't afford to do that. I don't have time. I work a full-time job, plus I have to have a second job to make ends meet. And then, okay, God said, okay. And He put the brakes on for the entire world and said, okay, now do you have time? And so I started attending Liberty University and working towards my degree in special education. And then, I got, so from May of 2020 until August of 2020, there was no work. So I got 3 classes out of the way, and I was on the dean's list, and so really making some good progress. And then this past school year, I decided to take a break because I had been taking classes literally since May of 2020, and I was starting to burn out, but I wanted to finish my goal. And so I had talked to some people at the district level, and they said that, oh, we can help you with this if you go to Grand Canyon University. I'm like, well, that's a Christian college too, so that could work. And I found out they give me a 15% scholarship because if I work for the Bearwood School District. I'm like, done. And so I'm taking classes again, and so I am hopefully going to graduate in 2025 with my degree in special education.
Nice. And I have talked, and every teacher has their own path, but a lot of teachers are zeroing in on retirement at your age. And I'm not picking on you, but I think it's so neat that what is it about working with you haven't said anything about what you do and like what you enjoy about it?
Oh, I love it. I work with, one child has Down syndrome, another child has Willie-Prater's syndrome. I have 2 who are intellectually disabled. I have 2 who are have behavior issues, trash the room and run away, and one sent me to the urgent care twice. But I love making connections. It's just that simple. I know my kids. I know them, and they trust me. And it's you cannot put monetary value on the impact I know I'm having in these kids' lives. You cannot. You don't go into teaching for the money, right, Gib? It's the hardest job. I love this job. It's hard. It's never the same day. You never know if the kids are on or if they're off. But I know I'm making an impact. I know one day I'm going to stand before my Creator, and He's going to say, "So what did you do with the little ones I sent to you?" And I'm going to tell Him, and my goal is for Him to say, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant."
Nice. Do you anticipate being a teacher for?
I will work until this body tells me I can't.
Nice. I mean, I'm not suggesting everybody do that, but
Yeah.
you have a long-term vision to teach and work with kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever I do, it's going to have the children will be around me.
Nice. How about your church ministry life? What are you up to these days? Or what do you look forward to in terms of your ministry involvement at the moment?
Well, right now I am choir, nursery, VBS, and God has told me that I'm going to lead a women's Sunday school class eventually. That's what's next. I've been filling that poll, and I don't know when it'll be or what it'll be, but I know that's what God has for me next.
Well, now we got it on record. You can't back away from it. Anything else you want to commit to right now?
I always help with the camp out. I always help with Celebration Sunday. If there's a need, I tend to fill it.
I forgot you were so involved with the Buzz, too. It was another thing that came to an end. Was that about
Yes.
18?
That was 2018.
Yeah. So, well, we're proud of you, Teri.
Well,
You're one of ours.
it's not. I don't do it for self-acknowledgement. I do it because that's what I'm called to do.
Yeah. Well, we've been on quite a journey together.
Yes, we have.
And what are we? We're pushing 30. I guess in a few years it'll be
30 years here.
20, whatever it is.
Well,
yeah.
she's.
It's
like,
when
"Not
she
30."
was born. So it's got to be 35 years, right, Sarah? No, I'm just teasing. Yeah, she's not that. Yeah.
She's only 28.
Yeah, gotcha. So, well, let's thank Teri Ulrich for being our speaker for today. Yeah, Lord, thank you for this time with Teri, and it's been on quite a journey, or it's been quite a journey, and I can't think of too many people that would have gone through as many things as she has, and kept coming back to her core foundations and seeking to do what she can and to not carry shame or feelings of being defeated. Even if she had them, she worked through those and just continue to serve and continue to serve and continue to be a blessing to others and continue to grow through it all. And Lord, there are ups and downs for all of us, and hers is certainly a story of some pretty low lows, but an awful lot of beauty in that story too, and a lot of neat opportunities to celebrate your grace in her life. And I know that the kids in particular have been such a blessing, and her relationships with other believers and with the unreached has been a great blessing to her. She knows her mission. She knows why you're here. Thank you for our sister. Be with her in these courageous steps that she's making educationally. That can't be easy. But thank you for the diligence you've given her, and may your hand of blessing continue to follow her life. Thanks for Teri, Lord, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks.